Yes, without work, without nothing, you want to you take sure. Sure. Yes. Have a little بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you everyone for coming to this Centris Coffee Table Chat. This is the first Centris Coffee Table Chat. As the name suggests, we will have a kind of informal communication right, between us, discussing about Maqasid al-Sharia, Maqasid al-Quran, and its application in the world. I'm Dr. Zahid Zamri from St. Chris. I will be your moderator for today's session. Today we have a distinguished speaker, Professor Dr. Yasir Auda. He is currently the Professor Fellow at ISTAT, right? A bit of his background. Dr. Yasir Auda is a leading scholar in the contemporary Maqasid, we need to say objectives of Islamic law, School of Thought. He has a multidisciplinary academic background, has been a member of several Islamic scholarly councils, and has contributed to the establishment of various educational and dawah institutions across different countries. He worked as a professor, lecturer, and researcher in numerous universities around the world and has lectured globally on Islam, its law, and its objectives. Additionally, he has authored numerous books and research papers, many of which have been translated into many languages. Since 2019, he has been working on an 8-volume of tafsir or commentary of the Quran entitled Tafsir Maqasidi, or objectives-based exegesis, of which he published 6 volumes in an experimental edition. He has published many books, among them the Maqasidi Tafsir, uncovering system from the books of ayat and surah, and also Al-Tafsir Al-Maqasidi, the one that I mentioned just now, 6 volumes. Envisioning Islamic Scholarship, Maqasid Methodology as a New Approach, published by Dar Al-Maqasid in 2021. Declaiming the Mosque, the role of women in Islam's house of worship, Maqasid al-Sharia as philosophy of Islamic law, a systems approach, Maqasid al-Sharia, a beginner's guide, to name a few, right? Quite a lot. And then he has also published numerous articles and research papers in various journals, conferences, and Islamic jurisprudential councils. Dr. Yasir Auda has been a teaching or research faculty at numerous universities, including in University of Waterloo, Ryerson, and Carleton Universities in Canada, College of Islamic Studies in Qatar, International Peace College or University in South Africa, Shenandoah University in Virginia, and Loyola University in Chicago, Mufti Brunei Darussalam in Brunei, American University of Sharjah in the UAE, University of Bahrain in Bahrain, Alexandria University in Egypt, Islamic University of Novi Pazar in Serbia, Cambridge and Southampton Universities in the UK, European College for Humanities in France, Islamic University of Indonesia in Indonesia, and so the latest one here, International Islamic University of Malaysia. Okay. He was also a founding member of organizations including International Union for Muslim Scholars, Muslim American Society, Muslim Association of Canada, Islamic Awareness Week, to name a few. I cannot really describe the scholar that we have today in full, right? Because a very well-known and very authoritative scholar in the field, especially in Maqasid. That's why now we are having him to discuss about Maqasid Al-Quran and its application in the world. The floor is yours.
كما ينبغي لجلال وجه وعظيم سلطانه الصلاة والسلام على أسلم الخلق. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، باركنا عليه كما يحب ربنا ويرضى، وكما ينبغي لجلال وجهه وعظيم سلطانه، والصلاة والسلام على أسلم الخلق وخاتم الرسل محمد صلى الله عليه وآله، ورضي الله عن المهاجرين والأنصار ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. ثم أما It is always a pleasure and an honor to be back at the Lombard campus. My brother mentioned Zakama presented for the generous introduction that I am now with ISTAT in the Lombard campus. So it's always a pleasure to be back here. I'd like to thank Dr. Hamidun for inviting me and being enthusiastic about the topic and contribution. And inshallah, hopefully, we have an exchange of ideas that hopefully are useful, inshallah, for our brothers and sisters here. I see here, as well as I can see online, mostly young men and women of our ummah, the age of our children, a bit younger, the age that is going to receive the flag of the ummah after our generation. As someone who considers myself retired from academia, it is a duty on me to try to convey to you a context, a bigger context in where we are living today and what we are going through. The talk about the Quran cannot be a theoretical talk that has to do with the language or the relationship between the ayat and the surahs and all of that. My brother mentioned I've been busy for a number of years working on tafsir, and now in Surah Tahrim, that is towards the end. However, writing that was not for the sake of an academic exercise. Writing that was for the sake of the Ummah. Maqasid al-Quran are the objectives of the Quran. The Quran has an objective. Allah sent the Quran for a reason. Allah said in the Quran, in Surah Al-Hadid, لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط. We have sent our messengers with clear signs, and we have sent the books and the scale so that people could establish equity or test or justice with qistas or justice, justas, the same word, Latin, Arabic. This is the main objective of the Quran. And therefore, when we think about Maqasid al-Quran, we are to think about how to achieve justice in today's time, and especially the role of this ummah in achieving justice. The ummah, the Quran mentioned, has an objective. وكذلك جعلناكم أمة وسطا لتكونوا شهداء على الناس ويكون الرسول عليكم شهيدا. Can we postpone the food until we finish the discussion? Then we cannot talk about the Quran and eat. Now, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent the books, the Torah, of course, the original, the Injil, the original, and the Quran, in order for people to establish justice. He said, لِيَقُومَ النَّاسُ بِالْقِسْطِ. The Quran by itself, as a book, is not going to establish justice, because the Quran, as Imam Ali anhu mentioned, إنما القرآن مصحف بين دفتين. The Quran is a mushaf between two covers. لا ينطق وإنما ينطق الرجال. This doesn't speak. Whoever speaks are the human beings. And if Allah says ليقوم الناس بالقسط, to establish justice, it is human beings who are going to read the Quran and establish justice on earth based on the Quran. This is the primary maqsad of the Quran, if we are going to talk about Maqasid al-Quran. The other half of the title that is given to me is Maqasid al-Quran in the contemporary world and establishing Islam in the world. The word world means the reality, means, how we live. How are we going to describe the reality that the Quran is supposed to establish justice in? or we are supposed to establish justice in that reality based on the Quran. It is essential that we describe reality from the Quran, not from a worldview that is not Quranic. Because if we describe the reality in the wrong way and misunderstand the reality, the paradigm, the narrative, you call it in English, a sardiya in Arabic, whatever it is, that is a tasawwur, we say in fiqh, which is how we perceptualize the reality. Is essential that we perceptualize the reality based on the Quran, based on that book, so that we can try to establish the maqasid of that book, justice, etc., shahada al-nas, in the reality. The reality of our ummah, and allow me to be frank and clear and non-apologetic, as I mentioned, it's not an academic lecture in a classroom, but rather a guest lecture in a chat with students and professors. So allow me, please, to be a bit more frank than the usual academic talk. As an ummah, we are under attack. We are attacked by the empires of the time. During the time of the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Quraysh did not believe in him and attacked him and his companions and tortured them, etc. The issue of Quraysh was not only an issue of faith. Quraysh did not want to say La ilaha illallah because they had economic interests that Islam was against. They wanted to keep a system of slavery and so on. They wanted to keep monopolizing the markets in a particular way. They wanted to do riba al-jahiliyyah, Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam mentioned. They had a whole culture that they did not want Islam to change. And then Islam had to fight with the Romans and the Persians, who had a difference of faith with Muslims, but faith was a core of a number of other reasons why Muslims had to fight the Romans and the Persians. The Romans were ruling the world at that time, and they were ruling even the Arabs that had some kingdoms in Arabia. And they did not want a new state to be threatening their superpower in the world. And the Persians were the other superpower, and they were fighting the Romans and the Persians. غُلِبَتِ الرُّومُ, you know the ayat. And therefore, when the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam sent ambassadors to them, and they killed the ambassador in case of Northern Arabia for the Romans, and in case of Persia, the king of Persia at the time sent two people to assassinate the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Medina in reply to his da'wah to him. They had political interests and economic interests, and as well as cultural interests. They wanted to continue to dominate the world. And I'm saying economics and politics and culture, this is modern language. I'm just saying this for the sake of our discussion here. Today, we are under attack from a network of crime, really, that at the core of it is white supremacy. I am a Western citizen. I've lived in the West most of my time, most of my life. But so I'm not saying that everyone in the West or every white person is part of that attack. I'm talking particularly about white supremacy that is in control of a large criminal network. That criminal network, part of it is the war industries, the manufacturing of weapons, etc. Part of it is the pharmaceutical industries and the selling of life and death through medicine and so forth. Part of it is agricultural, controlling seeds and changing the genetics of the world through the changing of the genetics of seeds. Part of it is Zionism, and this is one of the bigger gangs that white supremacy is actually employing against our ummah in order to control its economic destiny and its culture and so on. Part of it is promiscuity and social deconstruction through the reconstruction of relations, family, the definition of male and female, etc., gender, what they call gender in English. That is one of the networks of this modern empire. That empire, maybe until 100 years ago, was only a Euro-American Russian empire that is attacking the Muslim world. The Russians occupied the eastern part of the Muslim world. Did not reach here, but here there were the Dutch and the English, etc. And of course, genocide that you see in Gaza is just simply what they do. They did similar genocides in Africa and in Asia and different places, as well as, first of all, the genocide that happened for the natives in America. And therefore, you are talking about a genocidal network of gangs, as I am saying, that is actually controlling the economy of the world. Part of that is some governments, is some Muslim governments, or governments in Muslim majority countries, partly, where parts of these governments are what we call in Islam, since we're going to talk about the Quran, munafiqun, hypocrites. The hypocrite circles in Muslim governments. You see that. I come from the Arab world originally. I was born in the Arab world. And you can see that almost in every other country, where there are circles within the government, sometimes at the face of the government, sometimes within the inside deep state, they call it, that is actually part of the network of gangs that is ruling the world. That network is actually controlled by what is called the 1% club. The 1% club is the people with the highest 1% fortunes, money, really. Most of the money is just numbers on the screen anyway. But these people, most of the fortune is not numbers on the screen or nice papers that we are using and call it money. Actually, no. These people have the real property, have most of the real property in the world. They actually, the 1% has more than 80% of the total 80% economically of the world. This is a picture that manifests the challenge that we have as an ummah today. And this is a bit different from the plan that I put in the slides for this lecture. But since I saw, beginning of the lecture, at least young men and women here, I found it necessary to give you that picture that is the reality of the challenges of our ummah. And what is happening in Gaza or in Palestine or the region, anyway, the holiest region of Islam, the wars that you see in 7, 8 countries now, in Sudan, Libya, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, and Egypt. All of there are wars there, happening, and people dying from bombardment and all of that. That is a manifestation of that attack on the ummah. The ummah cannot expect the attack to be repelled by people who demonstrate for human rights in Europe. This is not our shield for the attack on us as an ummah. We are not supposed to rely on university kids in the West, and I taught in the West for quite a number of years. I'm Western educated, whether in the UK or in Canada. And I know the universities there, and I know that there are so many good kids, mostly non-Muslims, mostly interested in human rights and equality, and these myths that Western civilization is starting to realize that they were myths. People who are educated in the West are shocked now because they realized that they are banana republics, similar to the banana republics that they attacked in Africa. That aside, the lecture is not about the West, but rather on the attack on the Ummah. The Ummah has to repel the attack by building itself as an Ummah, by having a common defense. Defense is not just military. Perhaps we are too weak militarily to fight, and too many hypocrites or munafiqun controlling many of the Muslim armies, and therefore it's very difficult to fight as a Muslim ummah. But it is essential that we build our knowledge, and then our research, and then our education, and then our action based on the Quran, based on Islam as it is originally. And you cannot do that unless you look at the objectives of the Quran. What are the goals of the Quran in every aspect of life? Let me take a couple of those aspects as examples so that you can see the depth of the challenge and the importance of the work you do as students of Islamic knowledge and as professors and researchers and scholars here. Let us take, for example, the economic side. Of course, economics is a new science. It's not one of the traditional sciences, but let us speak within a window of assumption that we are speaking about economics. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran about public money. كَيْ لَا يَكُونَ دُولَةً بَيْنَ الْأَغْنِيَاءِ مِنْكُمْ. It is not supposed to be circulating. He's talking about money. Wealth. Wealth is not supposed to be circulating only amongst the rich of you. So there is a maqsid of the Quran, the Maqasid al-Quran, that you read about in the tafsir, that maqsadu adami dula. So the dula, or the circulating of money amongst the rich, you can call it oligarchy in English, you can call it monopoly, you can call it something has to do with, again, this 1% phenomenon I'm telling you about. Money is circulating, never trickles down, as Reagan said. Money is actually, since Reagan said that, money is going up. For those who are into economics would know what I'm talking about particularly. Allah, when He mentioned that, subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a maqsid, we are not supposed to let the rich circulate the money amongst themselves only. And what we see today is all sorts of monopolies and oligarchies that are doing just that. What does Islam do as an economic system? Islam as an economic system is not based on currency. Islam is based on awqaf. The economic system of Islam is based on what Allah calls in the Quran al-infaq fi sabilillah. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, from the beginning of Surah Al-Baqarah all the way to the end in Qasar al-Sur. الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَاعُونَ. Al-infaq, infaq, or to spend money in the way of Allah, is the pillar of the Islamic economy. And around that infaq, or pillar, everything goes around. Yes, tijara, or trade, is part of it. But in Islam, we do not trade in money, because when we have a piece of paper that has an amount, that is not called money, it's called sak. And we are not supposed to be trading in sak, let alone that we create the sak out of nothing, and then we multiply, and the central bank gives it to the branch bank, including the Islamic bank, with an interest. And then the interest continues to accumulate, and that piece of paper continues to depreciate. The dollar lost 95% of its value in the last 100 years since the disaster of the creation of the Feds, of the Federal Bank in America. And throughout the 100 years, these paper monies are actually losing by 95%. In Islam, we donate. Usually for Muslims, when you about to die, and that's from the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, you donate one third of your fortune as a donation. Allah said, Subhanahu wa Taala, من بعد وصية يوصي بها أولئك in Surah An-Nisa. So he is saying that do the wasiyah first, and then start to divide the inheritance. The encouraging of the wasiyah is one of the maqasid of the Quran. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving the wasiyah priority because it is, in fact, fi sabilillah. The wasiyah is for a relative. الوصية للوالدين والأقربين بالمعروف حقا على المتقين. The wasiyah mentioned, but the wasiyah that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told in Hadith al-Thuluth when he said 1/3 is enough for the wasiyah, that 1/3 Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam wanted it to be in fi sabilillah. Umar anhu, when he came to him and told him, I have a garden, I'd like to donate it, he said, Sabilha. Sabilha in Arabic is give it fi sabilillah. And therefore he started sallallahu alayhi wa sallam with this, an organization that known as Awqaf, Waqfi, we call it in Malay, but originally it's called the Tasbih or Al-Ahdas, or something that Habsul Mal, to imprison a piece of your wealth for the sake of Allah. You have a farm, you say, I'm no longer the owner of the farm. It's Allah who owns the farm. What does the farm do? The farm builds masajid. Masajid are awqaf. They are not owned by the government. They are not companies. They are not NGOs. They are awqaf. And then eventually, madaris, jami'at, universities were awqaf. And it started in the Masjid Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when you have people who do halaqa, and then masajid, and then eventually you started to have universities. Every university today that respects itself has awqaf, including in the West. I was at some point aware, at least involved, in the awqaf of a university in Canada. It's called Carleton. The Carleton University awqaf was about $1 billion. Is exactly the same system as the awqaf that were developed in Baghdad and Andalusia and Sicilia and India and so forth. They borrowed the system. In fact, they asked Muslim scholars sometimes on their opinions on the awqaf. I know that the Oxford Waqf or endowment, they call it, has some Muslim scholars there, and the Cambridge endowment and MIT and so forth. Why? Because when you have a waqf that is sponsoring the university is not depending on the government and the changes of government, even if the government is stable. And the university is not depending on the industry. The university is not educating people for the market. That is the capitalist economy. The Islamic economy that we have to fight back with is an economy that educates people for the truth, for al-haq, for knowledge, al-ilm, for al-qist, to establish equity. That is why you are educated. Yes, you can find a job, inshallah, get married and have a life. But in Islam, the maqsid of your education, maqsid of al-ilm wa ta'allum, is ta'at Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is to obey Allah and to do good. Al-islah, to reform and rectify and so forth. That's a maqsid of learning. When you have awqaf as the pillar of the Islamic economics, you have hospitals that are not a business. They are for the sake of the patient. And therefore, any patient of any race or religion or nationality at that time, whether you are part of the Islamic State or you're a visitor, you can go to a waqf hospital that will give you your medicine and will give you. Why? Because medicine is not supposed to be a trade. Otherwise, it is in your own interest to have epidemics and have sicknesses and have problems because you're selling the medicine of it. And pharmaceutical industry is one of the main knots in this network of gangs I'm telling you about that is ruling the world today. When you're talking about awqaf, you're talking about libraries and research centers. Bayt al-Hikmah in Baghdad and the Buyut al-Hikmah that we have were part of
that seeking of knowledge. And therefore, we have fiqh for the physics, and fiqh for the astronomy, and fiqh for mathematics, and fiqh for medicine, and fiqh was not only jurisprudence in that sense, not only for ibadat and amalat as we define them today, but fiqh was for everything. We have books that are called fiqh al-amara, the fiqh of architecture. And because the fiqh of architecture is not based on the market and is not really based on modernism, like today, let me take a side note on architecture. Because architecture today is modernist architecture, it is not compatible with the Islamic social system. It is high rises, concrete, two people, man and woman, and a couple of children in a flat. And if you are really, really rich, you can start to have something on your own. But most people live in that. That changed the definition of family in Islam, definition of a'ila. A'ila used to be not just a man and woman, atomic family, used to not be just an atomic family. A'ila was a tribe. You lived beside your uncles and aunts until like 50 years ago when I visited, my late grandfather's place back in Egypt. You find like a whole village where your aunts and uncles live. That society is no longer, because you are talking about a different society. You are talking about slicing the society into atomic families. Why? So that the atomic family is more efficient in the capitalist system. It creates more funds. And it's organized in a way that maximizes working hours, and so forth. Architecture is very dangerous. Look at the architectural changes that are happening in Arabia these days, from Mecca and Medina all the way to the rest of Arabia. I live in Qatar, so I live in the Emirates. I'm originally from Mecca. If you look at Mecca, you will see that there is a change in the architecture that is going on that aims to make a change in the society. And the society is changing because the architecture is changing. Maqasid al-Quran is dealing with these kinds of issues. Maqasid al-Quran, of course, are partly Maqasid al-Sharia, Islamic Maqasid al-Sharia, my brother mentioned, which are very highly developed. ضرورات حاجات واحتياجات كم تدين والنفس والعقل والمال. And there are theories, and they have an impact on fiqh, as we know, as ibadat and mu'amalat. But if we are going to talk economics and architecture, we're going to talk psychology and politics and international relations, and if our ummah is going to stand on its feet culturally, have its own AI, have its own communication, have its own military powers, its own, because so far we're relying on others, and therefore we cannot do anything because we fight with their weapons, we communicate with their networks, and we even now think with the mind, with the AI. There is no Muslim AI so far. The Muslim money is mostly in these companies. Meta has billions from the Muslim money, but not for a Muslim AI, for an AI that thinks in a secular way and thinks in many ways that are good for them. So if our ummah is going to stand on its feet in terms of knowledge and do the right research, and from the research create the textbooks that are going to be in our universities, and from the universities create movements that are going to change the societies and are going to fight back, not just fight back and liberate Al-Aqsa, but fight back economically instead of the capitalist occupation of our economics, and fight back politically instead of the political hegemonies of the East and West, and fight back in terms of technology instead of the hegemony, again, of technology on our minds and our devices, and fight back in terms of culture instead of all the culture industries, entertainment industries, and arts and expression in any kind that are mostly alien from us, and have very dangerous agendas. You know, the Disney agenda, the Hollywood agenda, the Bollywood agenda. These are not random things. These are people with strategy, strategize for these things in order for certain civilization to be hegemony through music and film and culture and creating your celebrities and the people that you consider influencers and all of that. This is created. And the Muslim influencers that are created are mostly created through that paradigm, because that paradigm is the paradigm that is shaping our world. So if we are going to think about Maqasid Quran, let us read the Quran in terms of its objectives for our real life, our real world. But then let us do prerequisite to that. Let us understand the real world well. Let us not have a brainwashed understanding of the economic, political, cultural, etc. challenges that our ummah has. We're talking Quran, we're talking Islam. We're no longer talking nation states. It's fine to have different kingdoms and different republics and federations. That's all fine. But it's not fine for our ummah to be divided politically like that and economically under hegemonies, and technically cannot even send a message without someone reading your message from the enemies of Islam, and so forth. And culturally cannot have an art, an Islamic art that is advanced and successful and shaping minds and cultures. And da'wah, who does da'wah for Islam these days in the world? Very few, and struggling. Who teaches humanity the language of Quran, Arabic? Who learns Arabic these days, as we now speak about Islam in English? It's very interesting that our ummah has to go through a challenging time. As I mentioned, I kind of changed my discourse today since I saw younger brothers and sisters here in the room and online, and I thought I would give you a just a piece of my mind and my heart, just for your sake. The world that we are leaving you with is a much more challenging world than the world that we lived when we were your age. I was in university now, like 45 years ago. So when I entered university 45 years ago, it was a very, very different world. Has its evils, but not like that, not like what we need today. So it's a very challenging world, but we have a lot of hope in you. Those who take Islam seriously. You don't want to take Islam seriously, you can live your life. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows your abilities, that is fine. But if you're someone who wants to take Islam seriously and wants to give victory to Islam and wants to push back at the attack on the Muslim Ummah, we need to understand the challenges very well and be very critical of the knowledge that we learn so that we can know that these challenges. And we also have to be part of the solution of the Ummah. We have to be part of those who push back. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the Quran, وَجَاهِدْهُمْ بِهِ جِهَادًا كَبِيرًا, and do your jihad with the Quran. You cannot do the jihad without the Quran. You'll be misguided and it will fall into the wrong ways. But if you do jihad with the Quran, your jihad, whether militarily in armies and resistance movements and so on, that is the military jihad. But that's not the only jihad. Or economic jihad, political jihad, jihad of science, information, the knowledge jihad, the cultural jihad. All of these are very important. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide you to this. I will not go further so that we have time for discussion. And again, forgive me for my frankness today, since it is a coffee table chat, it's not a classroom. A classroom would be much more academic and much more reserved. Since it's a coffee table chat, I hope that this transfer of experience and knowledge and view about the world would be useful to our brothers and sisters, especially at the age of our children here. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu
alaikum. Thank you very much, bro, for your frankness. We need that. By the way, I just want to mention that actually the dean wanted to come, but he had an emergency. And also Dato' Hamido, the director of Centris, currently is on the way from Sasmek, the hospital. Okay. So I open the floor if you have anything, because this is a coffee table chat. So coffee will come later, but we chat first, right? If you have anything related, very comprehensive, open eye opener, right? Maqasid Al-Quran, first we have to understand the context. If not, then how come we can learn, right, from the Maqasid itself that are available in the Quran? Anyone wants to give a definition?
بشكل أول إن شاء الله بالدعاء بالتحميل for الدعاء please and then to pray for him إن شاء الله الشفاء تام إن شاء الله.
Brother, please introduce your name and your problem.
My name is Dr. Samad, and I'm from Pakistan. First semester IBF PhD program. My question is that what I understood, this Waqf is the pillar of our economic system, Islamic economic system. Can we take it as, for our understanding's sake, can we take it as a reserve bank? As a reserve bank, what the capitalistic economy has? Or something?
Reserve bank.
Yeah, the monitoring control authority. Is that like that?
Yeah, that is an apologetic way of dealing with it. Like you can always imagine the Islamic system as part of the non-Islamic system. And since as someone who teaches Maqasid al-Sharia, I see a lot of this with Maqasid al-Sharia. I see people taking Maqasid al-Sharia and then apologizing for non-Islamic systems. So the non-Islamic, bank that is actually dealing in riba, but then we say, oh, Hifz al-Din, they contributed to a mosque, to building a masjid. Okay, Hifz al-Din. And then Hifz al-Ilm. Okay, someone took a loan and got married. Okay, and then Hifz al-Nafs. No, this is called apologism. This is putting the Islamic system under the non-Islamic system. The banking system is a ribawi system by definition. The capitalist system, whether social, however social it is. I come from Canada. We have a very social capitalist system, very tamed. Yet it is still capitalist, and it is ribawi from beginning to end. To me, you see, it's not really, it's not a riba-free system. You print something from nothing. It used to be give the holder of this a golden dollar or a silver dollar. You go and get your silver dollar or golden dollar, and then it's no longer. It's just a piece of paper. And if the Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said dinaru bi dinarayn riba, if the 2 dinars for 1 dinar is riba, 2 dinars for 0 is riba too. Like this is just riba. It is the reality, sure. And we have to pay zakat from it, and we pay mar with it, and we do hajj. Yes, it is the reality. But we should not apologize and say, well, no, this is the same system. The awqaf, my brother, is not owned by anybody. The awqaf is owned by Allah. And because the masjid is owned by Allah, nobody could come and close the masjid with the lock and say, oh, that's mine. You don't enter the masjid. The same thing with the hospital. The hospital is not owned by anybody. It's awqaf, it's owned by Allah. In other words, the basic services in a society are owned by Allah. And yes, there is a law that protects them. When you had about 70, 80% of wealth in awqaf, at the height of the Islamic civilization, there are so many masters and PhDs now on awqaf. You can look for them, but you will see that 70, 75, 80% of Baghdad at the time, Istanbul, Cairo, etc., was awqaf. Until like 100 years ago, growing up in Cairo, I have seen most of the hospitals awqaf back in the 60s and 70s.
Now there were like one or two Awqaf hospitals in Cairo. No more Awqaf. Everything is paid. You see, but when we had a system, even post the colonization, etc., or the neo-colonization, like it's against Awqaf. But we had a system of hospitals that were based on Awqaf, and therefore you don't have to be rich to go get your medication, or when you have universities based on Awqaf, you have what we call in the West academic freedom. Harvard are not allowing the President of the United States to change the curricula and appoint professors. And they are just universities. They are Harvard University, but they are saying no to the President of the country. Why? Because they have Awqaf. Yes, he took out 200 million from their budget, but they have billions of dollars in Awqaf, in endowments. And the billions of dollars are working and bringing them enough for a budget, and they are still giving scholarships and so on. And then when the government doesn't allow the students in, they make a treaty now with the University of Toronto, one of my older universities, so that if a kid is not allowed to study in Harvard, he continues his studies in Toronto. So why? Because they have Awqaf. So they are able to say no to a fascist system. You see, that's different from when you don't have this. When you have a good system, the university is fine. When you have a fascist system, the university is fascist. No, that is not the Islamic system. And we did have bad governments throughout our history, but they did not affect our education. When we had some of these walis that are really tyrants and all of that, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf, etc., he could not go and change what is the masajid and the madaris, and this is different. Ulama were different from umara. You see, why? Because ulama are not working for the umara. Ulama are paid from the Awqaf. And this is what I'm saying. And the idea, inshallah, is catching on. I'm seeing in Malaysia and different parts of the Muslim world, there is more a revival now for the Awqaf and using its tools now for mostly humanitarian projects, which is good. It's a good first step. At least we make sure that we have less poverty and we have less illiteracy and so on, so that the Awqaf will grow into an economic system.
I think you kind of use beautiful today my eye-opening Nabi. Because I am in a business community and I know exactly what capitalistic people think like, and that's how I take it this way, that there is a central bank controls everything. And the money which thinks is the part of everything. In your discussion and what my understanding is that Islam believes in believes in Awqaf and the Mehna and other things. So that gives the beauty and take this paper money aside. In the real time, like the Mudarbat in case people with efforts, they bring up with the business model, and the money has no control over him. All losses goes to him. It's all the way, in fact, opposite to the Western society. So thank you very much. This is a good thing. So what I understand in Awqaf, there is one pillar. Second is the justice, the judiciary of a Muslim ummah. Am I right? And third could be the what you call, if I take it as a broader way. So in conventional world, there is judiciary, parliament, and the administration. How about in Islamic society? Where does this Awqaf comes?
Well, in terms of the capitalist system, what we need is not an abrupt change. We cannot change the system overnight. Otherwise, we cause a lot of catastrophe to economies and to families and We cannot wake up in the morning and say, we no longer print ringgits. We're going to use ringgits that have the gold reserve. We cannot do that. Otherwise, it brings the economy down. And therefore, I'm saying that politics is different. Politics should try to maximize the benefit and minimize the harm. But I believe that there is room within that to be a bit bold, to push. But politics has to deal with the reality. So I'm not asking for demolishing the capitalist system in one night, because that's not going to work. We cannot do that. Or to fight with our own weapons in one night. We don't have weapons. We don't manufacture very few things. We cannot, you see. But I'm asking for a strategy to change. You mentioned the word Western, and I have a sensitivity from the division of the world into East and West, because Islam is now a Western phenomenon. I come from the West, and people who embrace Islam are a major phenomenon. And yes, the white supremacist empire I talked about is mostly in Western governments, but it's also in some Arab governments, some other governments. It's not just West versus East. And the scholarship that I did, I consider it to be Western scholarship. I live in the West, I publish in the West, and so forth. So just to put between brackets East and West, it's Islam versus non-Islam, not really Islam versus the West. But in terms of the Islamic political system, we haven't developed enough Islamic thought post nation states. There is a very good book by our Ustad Rahimahullah Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi that is called Fiqh al-Dawla in Islam, the fiqh of the state. Another book by another Ustad of mine, Sheikh Hassan al-Turabi, about the Dawla in Islam, state in Islam. Dr. Abdul Hamid al-Musliman, of course, we are in a building named after him. One of our Ustad too. He has a lot to do with re-envisioning the political science, especially international relations from the Islamic perspective. We learned a lot from him in that. But we have not developed enough to depart from the Hobbesian monster, if you're going to talk politics. We are still very Hobbesian and very Machiavellian in terms of the state. Even if we divide ourselves into nation states, we have to have forms of unity as Muslims, much bigger than that. You see ASEAN, for example, making unities, great. But we need Muslims to make unities too, not just, Asia and Europe. Muslims fail to make these unities so far, and there's not enough thought in terms of how to make these unities. We talk about the Ummah and Ummatic union and all that, but we haven't done the basic research for that. The research that goes beyond, that imagines a world beyond the nation state. So far, the nation state is now even an Islamic slogan, even though it originally is not. So we have not developed the state in terms of political science beyond the executive and the branches. In Islam, we have more than that. We have power for the people. The Awqaf, for example, gives a lot of political power to the people, because the people are in control of most of the economy, not the government. And therefore, you have a parallel government in the Awqaf. When people want to do something, they put money in it, and it becomes a reality. It doesn't have to get approved. And therefore, we need to develop that science.
So Baitul Mal is under Awqaf.
No,
that's a different thing.
Baitul Mal is a different way of organizing the state in the past.
So Baitul Mal is with the state economy, and this Awqaf is different.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
We have
wants to ask.
we have audience in the I'm sorry, I'm giving you my back.
Thank you, Jesse, for the session. So I have a question. Right now, I am working on this topic, sovereignty reimagining, revisiting state authority through the lens of the Tawhid epistemology. So the question here is that when I try to come up with a cute framework on this Tawhid epistemology, so basically, based on my reading, it's just like bringing back to the old, to the old study of Islam. If you see that one part is to come up with Islamic State, we have Quran, Sunnah, and Sharia, right? Quran, Hadith, and Sharia. Quran, Hadith, and Sharia. In order for us to come up with the Islamic State. But my question here is that do I need to be more innovative in order for me to apply in this modern world? And the second one is, or is it possible if I just follow the previous word? But then the question here is it applicable right now? Okay. And the third one is I want to do on this area. Most of the people will say that it is not applicable because right now we need to combine Sharia with democracy. But then my intention is I want to strictly impose Quran, Sunnah, and Hadith. What is your opinion on this? Thank you.
Are you on your PhD or not?
This is for my doctorate. I'm lecturer.
Your lecture?
Yeah.
That's post PhD.
I post PhD.
Oh, mashallah. Okay, no, post PhD, then I give you a full answer. Mashallah. Well, post PhD, yes, so you have to be more innovative. And you have to go back to the Quran and Sunnah in order to try to re-envision new thoughts for an Islamic state and to take a Tawhidi approach. I say Sunnah, not Hadith, because there is a difference between Hadith and Sunnah. I'm not sure why I say Quran and Hadith. Hadith is a narration. Could be right, could be wrong, could be Sahih, could be Sahih. But we say Quran and Sunnah, just between brackets. That's it. That's another lecture. But I'm just saying that if you go back to the Quran and Sunnah, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you should start to look for al-Maqasid, or the objectives, the political objectives of the Quran. Read the Quran with political, your background is political science. So read the Quran with political science eyes, and you will see things that are different from someone who reads the Quran with a different eyes. If you are going to take a Tawhidi epistemology, of course, the director of our university, our Ustad, you have to read what you have to say. You have to read Muna Abu al-Fadl. You know Muna Abu al-Fadl? Allah, read Muna Abu al-Fadl, because you cannot really talk about Tawhidi epistemology without reading Muna Abu al-Fadl, especially in political science. Dr. Muna was one of the founders of Triple IT back in the 70s, and she and Dr. Ismail Farouqi, she and Farouqi actually developed that Tawheed as a paradigm. That is, read the Farouqis, that's the third name I'm telling you about, after our Ustad, Dr. Osman and Dr. Muna, and Dr. Ismail Farouqi, read his book Tawheed, on Tawheed. And because he also had, of course, he was a philosopher, but with a political science leading. In the second half of the Tawheed book, he talked about the Khilafah and so forth from a contemporary perspective. Read also, if you are talking about civilization, al-Nasiri, Abdul al-Nasiri, ever heard? So read Abdul al-Nasiri, and especially his book on bias, epistemological bias, that book. And if you can read his encyclopedia on Zionism, because it shows the impact of Zionism on modern states, which is one of the major problems that we need to deal with if we're going to imagine new states. Democracy is a tool, and they learned from our civilization by taking the best that we developed, but redefining our best thought into the Renaissance. What we need to do now as Western civilization, to mention Western civilization, is this integrating. We need to take the best of their thought, And democracy has major problems, of course, as you know very well as a political scientist, in terms of the impact of wealth on the electoral process, the impact of the mob, the impact now of social media that is controlled by AI, that is not a neutral tool, it's actually in American companies that are shaping the minds of humanity. So democracy has major problems, but democracy is also a very important tool for peaceful alternation of power, which is a problem that we had from the first century. We have until today a major problem in alternation of power. Mashallah, Malaysia here, you don't have military coups and so on, they'll not protect you. But most of the Muslim countries go through coups and tribes fighting and taking over, making a kingdom, these kinds of things. And these things are very damaging to the political system. So perhaps you should look at democracy as a tool for alternation of power and as a tool for empowering the masses, but not exactly in the way the masses are being empowered these days, because they are empowered on a basis of ignorance, and that's causing a lot of problems. So basically, how can we develop a democracy? If you read Arabic, read what Sheikh Hassan al-Turabi, T-U-R-A-B-Y, or T-I, you might have heard about him as a politician, but he was a scholar better than the politician. And his book on political science, it's called Al-Dawla wal-Islam, something, the state and Islam. If you read that, this is different political science. He did not use one word from the current book. Not state, not ministry, not citizenship, none of these words. It's a thick book. It's very innovative if you read it from that perspective. But I suggest also that you look at the Quran and see what you are going to learn. Because these scholars of ours, whether we're talking about Hamid, Ramuna, they have a very good reading of the Quran. And it doesn't mean that you are going to give fatwas. You are not qualified for 50 fatwas, but you're qualified for political fatwas. You're qualified for political theory, to develop your political theory based on your understanding of some of the surahs or the pharaonic behavior or the politics of the people that the Quran is telling us about. There's a lot of history. There's a lot of politics in the Quran, if you read it this way. But because we are used to reading it with the fiqh eyes for the ahkam, of course, are the core of Islam, but the political science reading of the Quran, what some Arabs call it tafsir siyasi. There are some books by that type. Look for them in the Arab world these days. Tafsir al-Iqtisadi, tafsir siyasi, tafsir al-Ma'nari. People start to look at the Quran with political eyes or economic eyes. And the Quran is not simple. It is a very rich book that is highly untapped. And if you read it, inshallah, with your background, you should be able to learn. Inshallah. Go by and see.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm the consultant PhD student in IF. As we can read in the Quran, we read that there is a word of salah, so we have a zakah after the so it's a pillar of Islam. And also we can say it's a food economic system in Islam if we do improve the system. And applying and implementing the system in the society so it brings ease to that society and develop the unemployment of both segments of the society, bring them up. But we can see nowadays some people are putting zakah, which is the term that's been given by Allah. So it's not a human term that we are creating this term. some people are putting it under social finance. Like implementing zakat is bringing the effect of zakat will be on the society, so bringing up the society. So that the term zakat can it be under social finance? Or social finance will be a part of the implementation.
Excuse me, what is social finance?
I don't understand because for me, zakat is a higher rate of society to.
So they want to change the name. So they want, I don't understand. They want to change the name from zakat to social finance.
So they have social finance and they divide it into waqf, zakat, and some endowment. These all terms come under social finance. Is it a right decision?
I'm not sure what they mean by social finance, but you can put zakat under anything. You can say alif, ba, ta, sin, sin, ha, zain, zakat, sad, salat. You can put zakat under zain, zakat, or under social finance, or under amal salih, good deeds. I don't know. I really don't understand. They call it social finance, so they can call it social finance. I'm not sure what this is. Maybe there's something I don't understand. Sorry. You want me to criticize social finance? I don't know what it is.
No, I don't want to criticize because I want to understand this. Why it's under social finance? Because zakat is bigger than being social finance.
Is it like just an English word? Do they say it in Malay or in English?
English.
Okay. Maybe someone could explain it now. So,
because now I'm aware of in economics, right? Some economy they have this social finance things, which is related to zakat and also endowment. Are you trying to ask whether this zakat are they under social finance or they should be above them?
Above it.
oh, I see. Well, zakat originally is not up to the society. Zakat originally is part of the Muslim government role. Like originally, I'm not supposed to pay zakat. The government is supposed to come and take zakat from me. This is the original for our sister who writes about the state of Islam. One of the obligations on the state in Islam is to take zakat, not be calculate zakat and to take jizya from non-Muslims. This is the system in Islam. Now the system changed, and we have a secular system that requires research. What should we do? If you want to call it social finance in terms of just a name, but it's the same thing. It could be, but it's supposed to be taken by the government. I understand. Our reality now is that we volunteer to pay zakat. The government still pays zakat. Therefore, it is not really controlled by government. It's something we don't do.
Okay, thank you, bro. Any more?
Yeah, please. We have another question.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Prof, your acquaintance from Indonesia. I gave your book to Prof. Adi Setia to review. To Professor Adi Setia. Yeah, to review. He's a former lecturer here. Now he's an independent scholar. But it's 2 years and he hasn't reviewed that book, the reimagining or reinventing. Yeah. So let's wait for that review. So on that spirit, because most of the things that you see, they are, let's say, part mujaddis who are doing, like Prof. Owamin Anjum with Ummatics, the Ummatics movement.
Prof. Away.
Awamir Anjum.
I know he was my neighbor back in Qatar.
Yes, yes. So he's doing umatics, breaking boundaries of these nation states. And then we have like this money movement for monetary justice, Prof. Ahmad Kamil Maidenira, who's now dean or something, and our friend Khalid Yong Zaid Aziz is continuing. And actually, the work level is the president of this monetary association. And then we have Prof. Asad Zaman for Islamic economics, if you know. And we have many basically who are doing what you have criticized, and they are trying to improve today. And what is interesting or what is unique about yours, or your movement or your endeavor is the, let's say, return, or is it return or the usage or the basically the Quran, what's unique about your thing. So this Khalid Yong is very enthusiastic about Quran University. So he said, I want someone, a world-renowned scholar who has done tafsir, to endorse my idea of Quran University. What is Quran University? I can elaborate later. So from Indonesia, he wants Prof. Quraish Shihab, if you know him. And I brought him to meet Prof. Quraish Shihab. He can tell you later about Prof. Quraish Shihab's response to his idea of renewal of Quranic sciences and knowledge. He wouldn't call it Islamic sciences and knowledge. He called it Quranic sciences and knowledge. And he said that he has managed to get you into as an advisor for Quran University, which Alhamdulillah, if it's true, yeah, I hope it's true. So we are not, I and him, we are not kidding around, we're not joking around. We are trying to build Quran University. I say this to my fellow Indonesians. I don't know whether these people here can take it, yeah? I say this to my fellow Indonesians. We're trying to realize today all the muqjizats in the Quran, like teleportation. And then that brother doesn't hesitate to say, we're trying to recreate Isra Miraj. Khalid, yeah? I'm not kidding. And then we're trying to basically, create his words, the second age, the second golden age of Islam. So my point is, Prof. Auda, that's the positive part. You know, Prof. Mustafa Murad Tizakcha, Wakaf expert, economics, I think the foremost Wakaf expert in the world. So it's one of his books, Islamic Capitalism and Finance. So I did a webinar with him, Sheikh Farid Alatas, and Benedict Kohler, yeah? So the thesis is, there's such thing as Islamic capitalism, and it's good. And he's the world foremost expert on Wakaf. If he was here, he was in this tag also. Yeah? Basically what I'm trying to say is, there are scholars, mujaddis, part mujaddis, who will affirm what you say. There are also other scholars, mujaddis, part mujaddis, who will, how do I say this? Engage with you critically on many points. Funnily or sadly, Prof. Auda, in Prof. Asad Zaman's WhatsApp group, some say it is arrogance to say what you say in your book, Re-Envisioning, because you're, to them, effectively not using the heritage that we have, 1,400. I'm sure you encounter those accusations. So what is your response? Like I begin with saying that Prof. Adi Satya, who I very much respect, who I consider the greatest student of Alatas, Malaysian, yeah? Greatest student of Alatas. Others can check me on this. He hasn't reviewed your book, even though I have given him for the past 2 years. I bought it at on bookstore. I met him. Please review this book. So my question is, so we have great scholars such as yourself and the lady over there, Tawhidi methodology, and then this Khalid has problem with Tawhidi methodology. You can say later what's the problem. So we have all these great scholars, they are Pastabiqul Khairat, competing to do good, but they can't seem to be united. They seem, this is the problem you mentioned also, to form their own silos in their own movements with their own funding, with their own people. I met your Indonesian people, Lina Listiana, whom I'm only met once, and she refused to meet me for subsequent meetings. Yeah. What's your solution to that? To these great scholars who are working in their own worlds, let's just say that. So you mentioned a solution, or you mentioned that's the characteristic that describes Quran in the Quran, which is groups, yeah. But truly, what's the solution? Is it enough, for example, for us, your students, to gather you all in one room and have you discuss with each other frequently? Or what should we do? Or is that's not necessary? Let's just do Fastabiqul Khairat. Let's just everyone compete to do whatever they deem vital to the revival of the Ummah. Thank you.
It's a very long question. I thought it was very short answer, inshallah. The personal stuff, the arrogance and so on, I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me if there is any wrong in what I say or use. And if there is no wrong, that's fine. People could criticize. It doesn't matter. I learn from criticism. Other than the personal stuff, I don't think that it is needed for the efforts of renewal and the need to be united and to be organized. I don't think so. It's not the nature of the renewal of thought in Islam. In Islam, the renewal of thought is very much an individual project. Ibn Khaldun or Ghazali or in contemporary times, Iqbal, they could have been part of an institution or a madrasa or a madhab or a majma', but that it is very different when you are part of an institution, because the institution has its own dynamics, has its financial challenges, has its, and usually the institution becomes something that looks like the original thought, but is not equal to it. It is an interpretation of the original thought. Even a Muslim, there is a difference between Marxist work and Marxists who made up of it. There's a difference between Nietzsche and the Nazis when they took these ideas and they did something very different. Nietzsche himself would not have recognized what the Nazis did. And I see it in some of our staff. There's a difference between Qaradawi, for example, and his project on Wasatiyya and what the Union of Muslim Scholars is doing. It's a different story. So I'm just saying that it is normal to have individual scholars who are trying to make renewal efforts. And I appreciate each and every one of those, whether those who criticize or do not or agree. And I learn from everyone. And as for the Quran University, I'm of course consultant. I'm honored to be consultant. I don't consider myself to be part of any organization. And I refuse to be more than an advisor or consultant. With this university, I'm a fellow, and that's good enough. And I am an advisor for a dozen other universities and institutes. But I personally, as scholar, I'm beyond my academic career, just busy with the tafsir and perhaps working on disseminating it after I finish it.
When's the last 2 volumes going to be published? Is it published already?
No, inshallah, I'm in the last volume now. I'm in today in Surah Al-Tahrir. So that's, next will be Surah Tabarak. Tabarak alladhi biyadihi al-mulk. So inshallah, in 26, inshallah, we'll publish the 8th volume.
All the best.
Allah Hafiz, exactly.
Thank you. Any more?
Sure.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Muhammad Tajul Fakir, and I am a master student. I have one question. As researchers, we always view the issue through what we consider important. And in this case, I read my dissertation about Fiqh against against government policy. And as an objective researchers, government also have an important reason why they always maybe exploit the nature and something like that. Maybe like to save national income, to prevent nation to not bankrupt or collapse. Maybe what's your opinion in this?
البيئة is a modern Arabic word as a translation of the environment. But there is a similar word that is Quranic that is more comprehensive, that is called al-mubawwa. وَلَقَدْ بَوَّأْنَا بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ مُبَوَّأَ صِدْقٍ. Mubawwa. Al-mubawwa, I wrote about this in Tafsir. I can send you what I wrote about. I wrote a number of pages on it. The difference between al-mubawwa and al-bi'a is that al-mubawwa includes the non-material elements of al-bi'a. Al-mubawwa is the people too and the society that lives in the bi'a, and the animals and the culture and the industry. So if you look at the Quranic concept of al-bi'a, it does not slice only the material part. So just the geography of the land and maybe the animals and the sea life, but not the humans and what they do. And as if the humans are different from the environment. That's in the typical secular approach. In the Islamic approach, the humans are part of the environment and are integrative to the environment. And the environment and mubawwa is not just clean and economically viable for it to be good. And mubawwa in Islam could be mubawwa sidq, that there is a truthful environment and a falsehood environment. That's part of the bi'ah in Islam. There is a mubawwa of iman or of kufr, of haqq or batil, etc. So there are a number of components. I can tell you if I wrote about that in terms of al-mubawwa. So my advice to you is to be aware of the capitalist paradigm that defines the environment mostly for economic reasons. The environmental crisis, etc. When they define it, it's mostly to protect humanity and its economies and development and growth, etc. And all of these are not necessarily Islamic concepts. When we protect what we call hifd al-bi'a, mashallah, in your thesis, when we protect al-mubawwa, we are protecting the truth. We are protecting the animals and birds and so on because they are nations like us. We're not protecting them for our food. And we're not coming from a humanistic approach. So you need to be aware of the capitalist approach and the humanistic approach. The Islamic approach is neither. It's neither humanistic in the sense of being secular, and therefore, yes, have some good values and so on, but we have a further depth when it comes to understanding the environment. We believe that the mountains are alive and they have rights, and the rivers are alive and they have rights. Let alone the animals and the birds, they also have rights. It's not just for our economic benefit that we take care of the environment. You also, I think, need to consider the cost of growth on the environment. Read the books even in capitalist economics that critique growth. There is a book I read recently called Degrowth. The Degrowth, I don't know. Something degrowth, one of the economists. DE. Yeah, DE. So
Jason Hickel.
Hmm?
Jason Hickel.
Yes. It's a good economist, well, secular, but talking about growth as a problem, I think it's important because growth means that we are using the earth. That is part of the problem of the current industry and the environment. The lamps, for example, the first lamp that Edison made in America about 120 years ago is actually still working. The lamp is still working. And the first car that Ford made in America is still running. Because you can make a car that runs forever, you can make a lamp that runs forever. But industries put an expiry date and renewal strategies so that you continue economic growth. And therefore, we are growing economically, but we are ruining Earth. Because if we don't have all of these lamps, and we're still using the lamps from the Edison time, we would not have used all of this glass and plastic and in order for us to grow. And therefore, it is part of the Islamic solution. We talked about Islamic solution of capitalism. It's part of the solution to promote degrowth as a strategy and saying that we don't have to grow economically. Some European countries, look at the experiment that they're trying to do. I think Sweden and Switzerland, one of these countries, are saying people don't need to work 5 days a week. They are proposing to work maybe 3 days a week or 4 days a week. And they're saying we don't have to grow economically. We can just live. Because they realize that most of the growth is actually going to the 1% club. And therefore, we don't need to work that much. And we can produce sustainable goods. We can produce lamps that last and cars that last, and we don't have to renew the car all the time and the phone all the time and so on. And that should be part of your looking at the environment, because we are ruining the environment with the growth ideology.
Okay, very good. Maybe advice. Thank you.
No.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam.
Yeah, and dear Professor Oda, yeah, thank you for your kind support for the Quran University, Jakarta. My name is Khalid Yo. I'm from Malaysia. So I've been struggling for this Quran University for almost 20 years when I researched Al-Quran from 2007. And what they call the motto of this Quran University is that a paradigm shift is the change from knowledge of human, the empirical knowledge of human, to the knowledge of God. Allah said that we are moving for the knowledge of ta'wil. Ta'wil is the first principle, not really the tafsir. Okay, tafsir mendalam in the first principle. Allah explained a lot of first principle in Al-Quran, and this is what the West failed to reach the first principle. The West has studied a lot, for example, quantum physics, but they fail. The answer is in the metaphysics. They finish with the physics, so they have to go to the metaphysics. Similarly with Caneps, Rudolf Caneps, they say they want to remove metaphysics. But the beautiful thing is that he wants to do it through the logical analysis, the syntax logical analysis, which is Al-Quran. Allah said that the detailed knowledge hidden in the grammar of the Arabic language. When asked that وقال الذين كفروا لولا نزل عليه قرآن جملة واحدة كذلك لنثبت فؤادك ورتبناه ترتيلا. So the kafir asked, I mean, why not send the Quran in one go? Allah said, yes, it's correct. Because the nahu of the Arabic language is so powerful that even the Prophet himself, who are so perfect already, but still need to be to be strengthened. So this is the struggle of the Quran University, which is the same with the Maqasid Al-Quran. That is struggled by Prof. Auda. Only difference is that Prof. Auda approach is through evolutionary anthropological stance. That is to go to the economy, to go to the defense, to go to the people. But in our approach is that we go top down. This is the revolutions. We have 10 paradigm shift for that. And Shukran Jazilan, Prof. Ada is willing to supervise the work of the first most important activity, that is to improve the grammar of the Arabic language and the Quran. It is the first. But from here, we will get the detailed knowledge of whatever we want to search. In Al-Quran, I discovered it explained this knowledge for wireless communications. In Surah Az-Zariyat, there are 14 verses straight. وَالذَّارِيَاتِ ذَرْوَةً فَالْحَامِلَاتِ وِقْرًا فَالْجَارِيَاتِ يُسْرًا فَالْمُقَسِّمَاتِ أَمْرًا, and until the verse 14. And also about artificial intelligence. But the Quran explained about the real intelligence. This is much more advanced than the artificial intelligence. It is mentioned in the verses قُلْ هُوَ الْقَادِرُ عَلَىٰ أَنْ يَبْعَثَ عَلَيْكُمْ عَذَابًا مِنْ فَوْقِكُمْ أَوْ مِنْ تَحْتِ أَرْجُلِكُمْ أَوْ يَلْبِسَكُمْ شِيَعًا وَيُذِيقَ بَعْضَكُم بَعْضَ بَعْضٍ انظُرْ كَيْفَ نُصَرِّفُ الْآيَاتِ لَعَلَّهُمْ يَفْقَهُونَ. This is very powerful. Similarly, the West is searching for theory of everything, but they have not discovered until today. But in Al-Quran, Allah explained it already. Allah said that مَا خَلَقَ اللَّهُ مِنْ شَيْءٍ يَتَخَيَّرُ ظِلَالُهُ لِلْيَمِينِ وَالشَّمَائِلِ سُجَّدًا لِلَّهِ وَهُمْ دَاخِرُونَ. This is very, very powerful for the Muslim to come back and to lead against the world. This is our struggle in the Quran University. Then we thank you very much, Prof. Jasir Oda, for your kind support for us. And we need to come to Jakarta this December. So
And Yogyakarta.
Yeah.
Yogyakarta first.
Yeah, we will be to Jakarta, and after that we will invite you to Jakarta. So there is my comment, and I hope that you can give some response on that. Thank you very much. Jazakallah khairan kathir. Assalamualaikum.
God bless your work. As my brother mentioned, anyone who is aiming to do the deed and looking at the Quran for new ideas, there is someone that we need to support and need to help as much as we can. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help you with your paradigm shift. And I like your views on the Quran, very new and deep understanding the Arabic of it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. And you are right that quantum physics was not able to solve, the spooky behavior that Einstein talked about. But if you go to what they call metaphysics, we call al-ghayb. Al-ghayb wa shahada. Life is not equal to metaphysics. But we see that material is alive. That's why the material responds to behavior in a way that Einstein could not understand. And that's why when Bohm actually proposed a higher level of consciousness of matter. This is actually an Islamic idea, Quranic idea. And what you are saying actually gives an idea, not just for physics, for political science and social sciences, but also for physics and astronomy and so on. Because in Islam and the Quran has ideas that humanity has not comprehended yet. وإن من الحجارة ما يتفجر منه الأنهار وإن منها لما ينشقق فيخرج الماء وإن منها لما يهبط من خشية الله. Allah is telling us about stones that move out of the fear of Allah سبحانه وتعالى. لو أنزلنا هذا القرآن على جبل لرأيته خاشعا. The mountain understands and the mountain communicates. And that is a different paradigm, really. So when we study sciences with an awareness that the matter is actually conscious and has a memory, and it doesn't have to have neurons to be conscious, and it doesn't have to have, neural network in order to be to have a memory. That is a different shift from the shifts that they're trying to do with the quantum philosophy. And barakallah fiik, inshallah, about this.
Anyone from the from Zoom or online? Do we have any question in the chat box? Thank you, Brother Ashad.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'm glad that you are back here in Maqasid. We have the place in this step, and I was working there as an intern. You mentioned that Muslims now think with the mind of any client.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to expand with what should I call him Doctor? That our epistemology, our logic, value hierarchies are now outsourced to secular tech systems. So it has, formed a dominant logic. It has, but the thing is that it is no longer an economic metric. It's accepted as some of virtue, right? I itself, because I see it as the society looks at it as an ideological field, where society is now drawn into whatever is faster, whatever is scalable, and whatever is profitable. So my question is, this is kind of the application side of it, in terms of dealing with challenges. How could we use Maqasid al-Sharia to re-engineer the system? Because, Doctor, you just said that even the West, they are searching for the theory of everything. And we know that the Quranic intelligence is much more superior than the AI intelligence. But in light of the challenges of today, how could we substantially deal with it, re-engineer it in a fruitful way?
Well, yeah, I think similar to any dominant system, we have to work in parallel lines. We have to work in a line that is from within the system, trying to change it from within. It's like the Islamic banks from within the capitalist system, trying to make a change, a dent in the capitalist system from within. And then there is another line which is to work in parallel to the system. So in AI, the first idea is to try for these companies to respect the Islamic norms and the Islamic facts and so forth. So when you quote the Quran, first of all, do not make mistakes. Just quote the Quran verbatim. If you ask ChatGPT or Meta, Google, or DeepSeek or the Quran, you will find mistakes, and they tell you this is hallucinations. But if you quote the Bible, they never replace Moses with Muhammad or David with Abu Bakr. It never happens. Why? Because they told the ChatGPT, when you quote the Bible, quote it from King James or quote it from whatever. But don't just say anything about the Bible. We need from within to try to change the system in order for it to be more friendly to Islam. At least the money that is invested in these companies, we need with the money to tell them you cannot use the technology to kill people in Gaza or otherwise. You can, like, we sponsor as Muslims, as a Ummah, from our money and our oil and our resources. We sponsor many of these companies, but we do not tell them not to kill people in Gaza.
Yes.
Their technology. So that's number one solution. In parallel to that, I think we need to create our own technology. We need a Muslim AI system. The Chinese are saying that DeepSeek costed them $5 million or something. And this is a very small number. $5 million is a wedding party in any of the Arab countries. So it's really a very small number that could really make a big difference. So we need a number of Muslim companies that develop Muslim AI with the same technology. Like, this is not the third. The third line is to look for another definition, to shift the paradigm into a different world. And this also is important. But at least we need to play with the same tools and create our own AI. The third is to actually try to go against this. Because AI, yes, makes things faster and scalable and so on. But this is a very dangerous machine. I'm not talking from the outside. I'm someone who studied AI formally and taught AI in universities 30 years ago now. So I'm speaking from knowledge of that science. This is not a chef talking about science. This is a scientist talking about science. There is a problem in the system of AI because you are giving the machines and the designers of the machines, obviously, too much power on people's lives. Eventually, we will have no money. Everything will be digitized. Everything will be a chip under your skin. And if they don't want you to buy a loaf of bread, they will put a button and not make you buy a loaf of bread. And if they want to persecute you, they will press another button and send a robot to bomb you. This is coming in a few years, not in 10 years. This is, and they're talking now. I was watching yesterday, Google, the director, CEO, that's his name, talking about reaching general intelligence in 5 years. You know what general intelligence means? Is AI making decisions? Like AI sending an atomic bomb to just finish that problem with us. Yalla, let's send AI. No one is telling them what to do. General intelligence. And that is quite problematic. But they are actually doing that. They are working towards a doomsday scenario of the world with AI. And they're saying it, for God's sake. So it's really like, I think we need to work politically and economically and push against that. Many of our politicians are not aware, perhaps, of these agendas. And what AI is doing with the genetics of the countries that were invaded genetically, the Americans and the Russians are still fighting, but most of the Muslim countries, the genetics are with AI databases. And therefore, they are able to create vaccines or medicines or foods that target certain genetics. This is, proven even. I mean, the American government under Obama produced a whole document on the impact of vaccines on the blacks in America. This is not conspiracy. This is reality in some of the science that we have out there. So I think we need a parallel line, in addition to developing Muslim AI, in addition to trying to influence Microsoft, etc., to be more human. I think we need to also struggle in the third line to try to oppose this madness that the top 1% is taking us with AI. It's a useful tool. Yes, it is, but it has many, many problems that are not researched yet. The impact of AI on education. Professors are making assignments with AI and students replying with AI. And that is insane. There's no education anymore like that. And we need to go beyond that. Allah. So, very cool.
We still have actually a few more minutes. If you are okay with it. Any more? Anything? From the online listener? And then, anything? Anyone is raising hand? Okay. Okay, so thank you very much for Yaselda for this. Again, very eye-opening, right? We can see that actually the Quran itself encompassing everything, and we need to learn and also avoid this brainwashing. For us, not to have the correct understanding. All of these problems that exist today can be related to the Quran. We mean to say we can try to improve ourselves, try to find solutions, and a very deep explanation from capitalism to AI to secularism to that 1% bourgeois economy, maybe we can say. Okay, so thank you very much again, Professor Elda. We pray that you will have good health always coming back to this time. And inshallah, we'll come here again, contributing to us. Give you more. Okay, thank you. Assalamualaikum.
الذين امنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق. ربنا لا تؤاخذنا ان نسينا واخطانا. ربنا لا تحمل علينا اسرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا. ربنا لا تحملنا ما لا طاقه لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا بمولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. ربنا اتنا في الدنيا حسنه وفي الاخره حسنه وقنا عذاب النار. بارك الله فيكم. ان شاء الله. ان شاء الله.
Please take the food. Yes, you have some. Behold, what is it?
I'll shake your hand.